I am. My last discourse was extremely passionate. Passion and rage are very similar. Anger, passion, rage, they're just a lot of energy and focused energy. It again brought to my mind the notion of the you, because the you really comes up strongly for me. It's a directed you, the you is very present for me. A lot of times the you is somebody who is judgmental against me, is censorious against me, is a racist, is a conservative, complex gender being. I, however, react to that you as a being, whereas that being more than likely is not reacting to me as a being, but is reacting to me as something that it wants to exterminate. Because of that feeling, I get very passionate because I am not to be exterminated. I am doing what I do, and I do it with full passion, with full devotion, with full commitment. So I have this you that comes up for me. So my phrase for this is in regards to those who are not like that you, who are receiving the you energy, is more, if the you fits, wear it. It's one of my puns. And it's true. If you're not a conservative, then that you is not you. So don't worry about it. But it is a very directed energy. I feel very, very activated when I use it, and it's very helpful to me. I can identify the you all the time, but I think I just let it flow. Sometimes that you, and the you changes over a discourse. Sometimes the you is a very neutral being, and sometimes that being is a being, as I said, who is very, very hateful of me. I am not deluded about the fact that there are many who are drawn to me who dislike me. I experience it out on the street when I play. I have always experienced it. When I'm in my joyful, ecstatic, blissful state, though, it's sometimes I forget, and then all of a sudden they come forward in all sorts of ways. One of those ways that I find interesting is a person who comes up and is very complimentary to me, to us, to me and the sweetie. But I remember it quite clearly when I was by myself, because I was much more threatening by myself than with the sweetie. The sweetie tenderizes my energy field. She makes me more approachable. Otherwise, I'm very scary to a lot of people. But they would come up to me and say something like, "Wow, you're so great. Wow, I can't believe how you can sing that way. And what you're doing is divine, and the world is needing you, and just continue doing this." But over there are those people, they didn't like you very much. They were cursing you out, and they were making fun of you, and they were laughing at you. That is a backhanded compliment. That kind of behavior is abhorrent to me. What's interesting is that I can feel it coming before it gets there. I can hear them, the nature of their compliments and their flattery is such that it's way over the top and makes me wary. I much rather have somebody say, I really enjoyed that, or that was beautiful, or just smile at me, than to start going over the top with all this stuff, because all of a sudden I'm wary. We've had that happen so many times. People go over the top with us on the phone, in person, and tables and social events, over the top, saying all this stuff. Oh, you're angels. Oh, you're this. Oh, you're that. And I'm like, that's a little bit over the top. What are you up to? And every single one of them was up to something. They betrayed us somewhere along the line. They undermined us somehow. All of them. It's not a once in a lifetime experience. It's almost like I have when flattery at an over the top flattery causes me to quiver inside and go, when is the backstabbing coming? So that's how I feel about it. I touched base slightly on something that I really want to go into detail on, and that was in connection with money. I'm not really sure when I stopped concerning myself with money. I think, and I guess, because I can't remember well, I guess and remember that it happened when I was very much aware that I had found a bliss state. And I realized that I had really clicked into my being duty, my bliss state, my reason for being, my raison d'etre. Because that was the truth. Money was, I was now in a place of immense faith that if I found this, if I was now in so much a expressive space in connection with my violin, with my singing, with my dancing, it was just, I can do anything I want. I can express anything I want through these mediums. And that's not the only ones. As I said, there's a quaternity of expressive arts, and those are 3 of them. The other one is writing. That also is present. I feel very, very expressive when I write. It takes me a long time, but I still can express much in my writing. But the other 3 were there: dancing, music, and I guess theater and the arts, the theater arts. So once I truly opened up to that, I have full expressive reign and range over my expressive arts, I realized that money was just going to come. It, to me, in my faith, it does not seem possible to be so activated and to not have money come, just for any number of reasons, from any angle, from any place, from anywhere. And I was right, and I am right, and I will be right. Money will always come and always be there for me because I am in truly activated space with my expressions. So it brings me to this place. Because of that, it also allows me to be extremely clear and transparent about what I see around me, because I don't really need much. Frugality is my way of living, and I love being frugal. because it just, again, reflects how wonderfully connected I am to the bliss that I have found in expression. So I've studied Jung, I've studied Freud, I've been very involved in philosophy, I've been very involved in philosophy through the entire history of philosophy, through some of the modernists, all the way back to Socrates, who I adore. I would say that Socrates is one of my great heroes, has taught me the whole method of inquiry and dialectic, where it is the best and the most wondrous way of finding truth. We really don't now know his method so well because Plato was not, although Plato was one of his best students. Plato also was a bit of a, I think he was a little bit more of a idealist, and he had this notion of the nameless as a god, whereas it feels from inquiry into the method, into reading Plato deeply, that Socrates was very much more of a, here we are, let's talk about it, let's see what we can come up with together. And much more of a humble person. I think Plato was a little bit more egoistic, and I'm sure he was Socrates' best student out in the yard, and he was there when Socrates was murdered. I'm not saying I don't like Plato. I adore his dialogues. He taught me so much about dialogues and dialectic too. I'm just saying that they were a little different. And Socrates and Aristotle then was extremely different from Plato, being much more of a scientific philosopher, whereas Plato was more of a, as I said, a God is great kind of philosopher. Being that I've studied philosophy and very involved in it, and very involved in thus the psychology and philosophy of life, there occurred in the beginning of the 19th century, the 20th century, 1900s, a awareness that the mind was not necessarily so clearly all that was there. There was something there called the unconscious, and that became very much inquiry by Freud and Jung. They looked at it very deeply. They wanted to understand what was going on here. And as Jung also led people towards the holographic model, towards the unconscious being possibly outside of us, ourselves. But at the time of Freud, there became this awareness that we had an unconscious going, that there were some things that we were aware of, there were things that were affecting us that were unconscious. And let us say a cousin, a friend, somebody of Freud, became aware of that this thing called the subliminal state. This subliminal state was very well used then, because once I was, as I did previously talk about money, the subliminal state was recognized as a place one could imprint the awareness that, or the awareness of a product, a material desire, something, anything, and place this subliminal thing in a, let's say, an image, and could cause a person then to want that thing. For instance, at the same time, we started having the use of film, and film is not just a liquid, expression of something. It is photographs that are placed next to each other, that are spread apart by a minuscule amount of time, and it makes it look like something's moving. So that awareness that they could do that, and they could make something look like it's a moving and so we had film, and film started to become very large. So at that same time, there was the awareness that there's the unconscious, and one could embed within this very fast moving clips of imagery something that could cause people to want something. The test was, and I'm not going to say this is definite, I just know that this was one of their tests. The test was, the film was, an audience watched a film, and in the middle of these clips and these imagery was placed an infinitesimal moment of a Coca-Cola bottle opening up, and the wonderful Coca-Cola bubbles coming out of the bottle. And while people are watching this film, this Coca-Cola bottle full of the effervescence flashed and imprinted on the unconscious, they found that so many more people left the theater and went to the sales kiosk to buy Coca-Colas that they knew that it affected people. This was practiced many times. I don't hear about this very much at this time, and yet it hasn't disappeared. You can not think about it and say, well, that was banned. They found that it was a very problematic thing to do. But it's not like that's not something that people wouldn't want to take advantage of. To be able to control somebody's mind that way, to use an image, to use imprint of a product and try to control and make somebody get that product, that is very large power. It is not something that people can easily stop using. I'm going to jump slightly because that was a long time ago. I think that was in the 20s, perhaps. In between that time and in between the modern era, there was Hitler, who used some things that were very connected to electronics and the electronic technological growth that happened. I was watching on New Year's, and I don't remember what year that was. I was watching on New Year's a broadcast of the ball coming down in Times Square, and what was really strange about that is I don't usually watch that. I don't find that interesting at all, and yet I was watching it. A strange thing happened in the news, and that was that a person's business was supposed to be in the clip, in the filming, because it was sitting there in the area. It was clearly that that shot that was shown on film would show this business. Instead of this business, there was a blank space. There was an empty, there was nothing there. I remember this really, really clearly, and I remember this problem. The people complained. They complained that their business was there, and why was it missing from the shot? At the same time, we had the new verb photoshopping. And that meant that you took a photograph and you could manipulate it in a way that you could take out certain parts of it. You could turn a person who was somewhat ugly into somewhat more lovely by taking out wrinkles or taking out a mole or taking out a bump on their nose. All of these things are important because that thing that happened to this business that was eliminated from the shot had disappeared from the news. I was riveted to it. Because, as I said, I find it really interesting from the subliminal cut through the Hitler times, through the other things that I could speak of, but I'm not because there are just too many. Where the use of technology has caused the user to manipulate an image, to manipulate an environment, to make them have control of the situation, to sell something, to protect themselves from something, to eliminate something, to make something appear better so they could sell something. And the only reason for it was to sell and to make money. The only reason. I have not heard of another reason. The photoshopping of photographs. I photoshopped photographs. I've done this. I've done this in film. I've placed subliminal cuts in film. Do you think that somebody more powerful in the environment of film has not done this? Then how do you track it down? How do you look for it? Because it's so infinitesimal, it's so small that it's almost impossible to detect. If you're sitting in a theater and you're watching a film, how do you know that it's not there? Is there some legalization where it says this is disallowed? And how do you track it? You can't. That is really not even as bad as I'm going to take it. Because Photoshop is a digital medium. The reason that you manipulate photographs is because you can take the squares, the pixelation, and you can manipulate pixelation to a point where it's not possible to detect. I can manipulate pixels in a pixelated realm that, as you pull away from that photograph, it's completely invisible. You can place words, you can place all sorts of things. So my way of fooling around with has just been because it's funny, or just, wow, I can just change this. And in certain cases, in this video, I've coughed and I've cut that out. That cutting it out is a change in the natural filming of it. So it was unnatural. It's not really what happened. This thing of that it really is not what happened is really important to me. It touches down in that realm of, that's why I stopped using microphones and electricity and amplification and all of those devices that you use. Because I want to be real. When you come upon me in the street, I am there. There is no pixelated change in my voice. There's no pixelated change in my body. I'm old, I'm aging. My muscles are this way. They really are this way. So here's where it goes really batty. When we record in a music studio, we are also using pixels, digital media. that digital media is manipulable, manipulable. An engineer can sit in with the tape of a performance and can take out notes, can take out whole verses of sound. The whole notion of lip syncing came into existence then. There was a crisis with lip syncing. Somebody, I don't remember exactly who the artist, was caught lip syncing. That also has disappeared. There's nobody talking about that anymore. And that's because everybody's lip syncing. That's all that's happening, really. So an engineer can sit at their engineer. I do this too. Reason allows me to go into an extremely strong manipulatable space. Manipulating space. I can change all sorts of things in a recording. I try not to be seduced by such power. I try to be really as real as possible, but it's still there. So what happens when you have somebody who can't sing very well, but who is fairly famous and who wants to be more famous? How much do they eschew using this power? How much do they not use it? I don't believe it's possible for them not to. I believe that they would use it as much as possible because it would make them more powerful. It would give them more fame. It would give them more money. I accuse them of doing this. Just recently I heard of a person who was quite a lovely singer, singing at a large event in a very large venue, let us say, an open venue, and singing as if they were in full voice. And yet there has been news that that person cannot sing at all anymore because they have a disease that makes it impossible for them. They were lip syncing, this person. I will not put my finger on them because I don't want to place that person in that kind of space, but they were lip syncing. They were making believe they sang. To be a being in myself who is so real, who is so out in people's presence, singing fully and saying, here I am not using a microphone, and I am not using amplification, here I am, and I'm still going to affect you. And to have somebody doing that and making tons of money doing it and having tons of fame doing that, how does that feel? What does that feel? How do you commiserate with that? Do you even understand what I'm talking about? I don't think so. Here's the other thing, and this is an even more problematic. Digital media, the pixels, the digital space in sound recording is empty more than it's filled. In other words, when you look at a picture of somebody, there is more space. As you get more infinitesimally small, there is more space there than it is filled. And you cannot see that space. You cannot hear that space because it's invisible. It's actually so invisible that it takes a device immense capabilities. My computer is actually not capable of that yet. Yet it does sound stupid. My computer is not capable of that. I can go pretty deep and I can see some space. But some of the incredible computers that exist, for computers in NASA, for instance, they can go so deep that there is no space there. There is so much space that there is no, what I mean is there is no data there. there's so much space that it's empty for huge amount of area. In a recording, when we record, our recording has digital information, but it's in comparison to how much space there is in that recording, the digital information is nil. When you look down in that, like the computers that look into space, into planets and solar systems and galaxies even further distant than we even know right now as a society. There is so much space, and between galaxies, you cannot even understand that. These galaxies are gigantic, and yet between the galaxies, there is so much space that it makes the galaxies diminish to a pinpoint, and that's even too big for them. What is happening in that space? This is where I'm now going to talk about my theory, about my feeling about it. In that space can be unconscious material, can be ideas, can be the fine energy of life. If somebody who records something fills that space with their desire for money, with their desire for material wealth, and they are very famous, they receive that material wealth through that space, because as they're recording their CDs, their material, their music, whatever, they are fully engaged in the desire to make money. Most musical artists are. Most of you are. This is something that I spoke to just the last time. You are so focused on money that that's the only question you can ask me, instead of asking so many other things. There are so many other things, like how do you age the way you do, Thoth? So many things I could tell you about aging, about how to age gracefully, and I model it too. Instead, you ask me, where is your money coming from? I say, that's what I call stupidity. Even more so, we have beings who are popular, who in the recording studio are so wrapped up in making money and making a buck through their recording that all that desire is placed in that space, that empty space between all their notes. So that when you ingest, when you listen to their recordings, you are ingesting their desire for money. So they are passing that on with their music to you, just like a subliminal cut, just the same way that they used to do that in a movie theater and put a bottle of Coke in front of people and then they would go off and buy a bottle of Coke. These artists are being used through their desire for money to cause you to desire money even more. That's why I stopped listening to all your popular artists, all your films, all of your culture, so-called culture, because I distrust it. I think it all is fake.